Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. I am your host, Rob Z. I love to jump into powerful questions that lead us to incredible breakthroughs. So I bring amazing guests on the show who have had incredible experiences, incredible breakthroughs in their lives. Today we have the amazing Daniel Gospodarek. I think I kind of got the last name right. And man, I'm so excited to talk to you because you've had quite a journey through traumatic brain injury that has shaped your life and your career. So I wanted to dive into that question right off the bat. How did your near-death experience and the traumatic brain injury that you had experienced shape your approach to your life and shape your approach to your career?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Rob. But I would say when I was in inpatient rehab after my brain surgery, there was this feeling, this thought inside my body that kind of was like, "Hey, you're gonna land somewhere in this profession. Don't know where yet, but there's it could be nursing, could be physical therapy, could be speech therapy, occupational therapy, or probably not a doctor. I wouldn't go that high, but somewhere right on that level, and I just didn't know where." And that was my first kind of glimpse into this. And then as time went on, had some conversations with other people, and that directed me to the social work profession.
What were you doing before this?
So my TBI happened the summer between my junior and senior year of high school. So not a lot. Just being
Okay.
a student, was working a part-time grocery store job.
Still trying to figure your life out.
Yeah. It was interesting because before the TBI, I was either gonna I thought I was either just gonna go get a job after high school or join the military. So, but that's not what happened.
It's incredible how the things that come out of left field in life can end up shaping our life in the most positive ways. Also in negative ways, but it seems like for you, this has been an amazing life-changing experience. So I want to go into this, like what happened with your traumatic brain injury? How did this all go down? But first, I just want to welcome people here, this platform. These are real, true stories of people who had incredible breakthroughs in their lives. They overcame those things, and these things reshaped how they live, how they think, how they function. So we're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy, by the way. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com, an incredible platform of over 400 heart-centered entrepreneurs from all over the world. Daniel on the show today is a licensed clinical social worker from Denver, Colorado, specializing in helping men recover from trauma, PTSD, and traumatic brain injuries. After sustaining a near-fatal TBI himself, Daniel dedicated his life to helping others overcome similar obstacles. So, as far as your story and what happened that led you to where you are today, what was the traumatic brain injury, and how did that all go down in your life?
Sure. So it was July 2009, and we were in a rural area of Wisconsin, and I was a passenger in a car. And we were actually slowing down for a stop sign, believe it or not. And then both tires on the right side of the vehicle went off the road onto the gravel side. Driver corrected. We ended up in the oncoming lane, then corrected again. And that overcorrection just put us into a roll. So we did 3 rolls on the highway, and then 1 roll into the ditch and into the farm field. And from there I blacked out. So I was out for that whole time period getting to the hospital. And then they put me in a chemically induced coma for 3 days after the surgery. So didn't really know what happened in between there. But from what other people tell me, right, I was unconscious. EMS came. They were going to take me to one hospital, but luckily the driver of the vehicle's mother is a nurse and was like, "Hey, if he has a head injury, he's going to need to go to a higher trauma a hospital, so they took me directly to a higher trauma level hospital than what they were originally going to take me to, and then had to have brain surgery because I had a brain in my left temporal lobe, and then yeah, they had to take the skull off to stop that from the bleed. I had a stroke in my left temporal lobe, and then, or I'm sorry, my left frontal lobe, and then collapsed lung, fractured skull, and just some other, minor, more or less severe stuff.
Well, God bless you. You're here today, man, using this thing as a message to help other people. It's crazy. I'm just hearing you tell a bit of that story. It is crazy how fast life can happen,
Hmm.
right? Things can change. People say this, that things can change in the blink of an eye, but really, you don't fully understand what that means until it happens.
Right.
And then you're like, whoa,
Hmm.
everything's different out of nowhere. So, between slowing down for the stop sign and crashing, like, did it seem at the time like anything was about to happen?
No, I mean, I was anticipating going home and Skyping with one of my friends that evening, and obviously didn't make that call.
Yeah.
So, but it's just out of nowhere. These
Yeah.
things happen. There's
Yeah,
no,
it just
there's no warning sign.
puts in perspective for me the fragility of life, right? Things are so
Mhm.
fragile, but it's also amazing how these things can be used for our benefit. And if we look at them correctly, it can be used to reshape or to just shape in general how our life plays out and our role in life and our,
Mhm.
our role in humanity, how it plays out. So I find that to be really interesting. And the fact that you came through this, what was that process? How long was the process of recovery for you?
So 10 days ICU, 7 days inpatient rehab, and then 3 months of physical therapy with some occupational therapy for a couple weeks, and then 17 months of speech therapy.
Wow. How does it feel for you to go back and talk about it? Is it hard to talk about still, or is it something that, like, now has become a part of your story?
Yeah, I think it's more of that integrated part of your story, right? Like one of those looking back, right? It's one of those defining moments. But then when you're in it, it's hard to see that though. It's hard to really feel that kind of resonate in your body that this is kind of shaping or forging your character into where and what you're going to be doing. But then looking back, 5, 10, 15 years, you're like, yeah, like I don't know where I would be or what I would be doing at this time without
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020. Like, you can see it
Mhm.
clearly in the rear view, but when it's happening, you really can't track that. That's amazing. It's amazing when you, because they always say, like, when you make goals and you set plans, you set them up like a straight line, but really
Mhm.
goals are like, and plans are all over the place.
Mhm.
It looks like a car accident, right? When you look at, like,
Mhm.
your goals and how you get to go somewhere, because it's all over the place. And so
Right.
I love the fact that took this thing,
Mhm.
and I hear you use the word grit a lot. Like, the word grit means
Yeah.
a lot to you, and I love that word. That is a powerful word, and it's a powerful value to have grit. So what does that mean to you?
You're not looking for a textbook definition.
Now I'm looking for your definition. Like, what
Yeah.
what does it mean for you? Like, why
Like, how
grit?
how is it embodied, right?
Yeah.
It's a really good question. And I think part of it is lived, right? But if I had to, like, put words to it, it would have to be like I'm flipping through my words, my vocabulary, almost like an assertive defiance,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Where, like, obviously defiance is like, could taken to an extreme could be really, really bad, right? Or
Yeah,
cause a lot of consequences for you and
sure.
others. But then there's also like this assertive piece where it's like, well, you're standing up for yourself, or you're standing up for the things that you're passionate about or you care about, right? And then kind of merging those two, right? You're standing up for those things that you are willing to defy or willing to push back against, right? And I think so. For example, it was one of my last days in the ICU. One of the doctors was like, "You're probably not going to graduate with your cohort of high school students, right?" And I don't know where it came from, but I was like, "No, I will," and I did, right? And I don't know where that exactly came from, but it's just like, no, I'm gonna draw the line in the sand and say, we're gonna move forward from here. So I think having that courage to say those things or do those things, but then also following through and committing and being accountable to those things is also where it comes in. But yeah, I think assertive defiance might fit.
Yeah, man. I love the way you define that. That's a really good definition. Assertive defiance, because grit shows up. Do you feel like you had grit before this happened? Did you feel like that was a part of who you were before this? Were you assertively defiant before the accident, or was it something that came from it?
I don't know if I was at like the same degree. I think it really started bolstering afterwards. Um, but I definitely think like how I was raised, right? Rural Wisconsin, farming community, long hours baling hay, picking stones in the field in the summer heat. Like some of those things, and then also athletics too are a great way to kind of shape and forge those character aspects
Yeah, for
that are
sure.
needed. So definitely was 100% started way before the accident, but then there's a point where it's like nobody's going to do this healing process. Nobody can like tag you out, so to speak, and be in that hospital bed for you. It's all on you. And yeah, again, I don't know where that telling that doctor no, I'm still gonna graduate came from, right? And I didn't know at the time like if I was actually gonna be able to do it or not. But
Yeah, but you didn't want to hear that you weren't going to.
yeah, like you're not gonna tell me what to do.
Yeah,
So
I
so
love
I
that
think
because
and maybe that was also a teenager part, right? Like
yeah. Well,
17
you
going on
didn't
8.
receive it. I think that's a huge part of life too. Is like somebody might speak something over you, and you're like, I'm not receiving that, because some people would have received it. Some people, and I'm not blaming or putting anybody down or anything like that. I'm just saying I think some people hear things and they just receive them as
Mm-hmm.
truth, and that they don't ever question it.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, for whatever reason, you heard that and you were like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Something within you was like, nope, that's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that, man.
Yeah, I think it's pretty powerful when we can start tapping into those aspects of who we are and our identity and really unleashing kind of, the unstuck movement, right? Like being able to tap into some of those aspects that it's kind of like, a woman picking up a car because their kids are in it or something, right? It's like on a
Right.
general day, you probably don't have that in you, but at that moment, right, in that emergent situation, your body was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, let's go."
Yeah, and you said at the beginning here, so coming out of this accident in the hospital, you kind of knew that you were gonna head into this field to help men overcome trauma, PTSD, TBIs, things of that nature.
Hmm. So I think that part is the male part has become more refined, as I'm coming into who I am, because I think our identity is continuously developing, right? Like
Yeah.
people graduate college, people maybe find a relationship or don't, right? People maybe have children or they don't, right? They have a career or maybe they switch careers, right? So all these aspects of identity shift over time. And so I think the male portion has really come in the last like number of months where I'm like, this is where I want to sit, right?
Why?
And
Why do you feel like it was more, why do you feel like you were drawn to work with men through this?
so one, identifying as a male is one piece, but I
That's
think
helpful, yeah.
yeah, I think some of the relational piece can be really impactful. Um, also being a father, being a husband, if those aspects are there as well, and then just the pieces around talk about kind of like coming unstuck or some of those stigmas about men either not willing or not wanting to ask for help,
Mhm.
and men also experience just the same amount of stuff that other people face in this world, right? From, loss of loved ones to unexpected deaths to, job loss, stress, right? Also the pressure on society to make everything look wonderful on the outside, even though there might be just turmoil and chaos on the inside. So really starting to dive into those pieces and, reflecting too, like, again, hindsight's 2020 looking back, right? But like my recovery journey was sometimes day by day, or in some cases, like when I was having trouble falling asleep, like I would dread going to sleep at night because I know that if I wanted to fall asleep by 10:30, I'd have to go to bed by 8 or 8:30 because my thoughts would just race, right? So, and like some of those things like aren't always talked about, right? Now, granted, mine was a TBI, but maybe that is combat exposure, first responder exposure to trauma, right? But those pieces can show up. So that's kind of why I've niched down, so to speak, or refined it more.
Well, the reason I was kind of curious, I have a friend who experienced a TBI a couple of years ago and
Mhm.
actually got amnesia and
Mhm.
forgot most of his life. And I wanted to actually ask you a question pertaining to him and if it related to you as far as the anger that comes from this sort of thing. So
Mhm.
I want to dive into this question and
Mhm.
more related to it as far as how you help guys recover from these injuries. But we're going to jump real quick into a 60-second commercial
Yeah.
for the sponsor of the show. When we come back, we're going to find out more.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So I had a friend who a number of years ago was in a tree stand, like 20 feet in the air. The tree stand fell. He fell
Mhm.
20 feet, landed on the ground, was probably possibly dead in the woods and came back to life, I think, by the grace of God. And through this, he had amnesia where he forgot most of his life.
Mhm.
And also through this experience had developed like a major anger issue
Mhm.
from and I'm not fully I don't fully understand how the brain works and why a brain injury causes the anger, but I know that's a common thing. Is that something that you went through experiencing that anger? Did you experience any amnesia or anything like that?
So to answer the amnesia standpoint, not mm, maybe like no, I wouldn't even say that was amnesia. No, I would say no to the amnesia standpoint. When I did come out of the coma the first time, I thought I had gone through, so I never traveled to Europe or, across like major time changes. So when I came out, I thought I was in France for some reason. It was very strange.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I again, like there are things we don't know how the brain works entirely, right?
Yeah.
But like I thought I was in France. And then at the same time, I still asked for how the driver was doing. So there was like this like dual awareness of like what had happened, but also like did it actually happen? Am I somewhere else? So it
Right.
was very very bizarre. But like I remember the France piece, but I don't remember asking, how my friend was from the accident. So like if you want to call that amnesia, right? Like not remembering that piece, but like I don't have aspects of time that I no longer have recollection of. Or
What about the anger part of it? Did you
yes.
experience that?
Oh yeah, especially so the anger for me really didn't start setting in until like it was more irritability at first, and then
Mm.
after my first concussion, because your brain is very sensitive after a traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
So like I just bumped my head on an open cupboard door in the kitchen and I had a concussion. And then the anger and like the sleep challenges and the frustration really started to build. And then who do you take that out on? It's most likely your support system, because they're the closest people to you 24/7, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's kind of like that unfiltered rage just shows up.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's a different part of you, but it's almost like a different person coming into the picture.
Yeah,
And it's
man.
like, what do I do with this?
Yeah, no doubt. Just to relate, I don't know if I've definitely had a concussion or two, and I
Mhm.
definitely do that rage that you speak of. That has come out in me before. Usually in high stress situations where I feel like something's fully out of my control,
Mhm.
which it's really not. I still have control over me, but that
Mhm.
rage is scary because it doesn't feel like you. I subscribe to the idea that it's actually not me, and I don't need it, and I don't want it. So I kind of rebuke it that I'm not going to claim that anger,
Mhm.
but it still shows up, right? So what do we do about that? Because I think that happens to people who have had brain injuries and people who also haven't. How did you work through those anger issues? What have you done to minimize that?
I mean, counseling myself had to go. I channeled a lot of my extra energy and focus into physically working out.
Mm,
Um, one at least 1, 3, 5 times a week, be it running, lifting, whatever it is, right? Um, I think there was a piece of like, or a part of the equation was also just kind of letting the TBI injury recover and slowing it down
mhm.
and giving that space. But also fatigue was a big factor in irritability and anger, right? So making sure you get enough sleep, right? Diet, another huge part. So making sure some of those variables are well managed, so to speak. And then also looking at the time, for me, like I didn't experience this as like burnout because I was not working, right? But burnout can also lead to irritability, right? If you go to a job 4 or 5 days a week that you're unhappy with,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stress in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of angst, right?
Mhm. Definitely.
So when you're going through this process for yourself, what were
Mhm.
some big breakthroughs that you had? Because obviously you're dealing with anger, you're dealing with the recovery time, you're dealing with all of these things that you probably never had to deal with before. And now you're
Mhm.
finding yourself having to go to speech therapy to learn how to speak correctly again and things of that nature. There has to be a lot of frustration, irritation, anger that comes from that, just because that would be really hard without a brain injury to have to
Mhm.
do all of those things and relearn all of those things. So, were there moments that stood out to you as like, "Oh, wow, this is something shifted, something changed," and what had caused that to happen? Can you point to anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's quite a few of them where you kind of start to notice things shifting, hopefully for the better. Um, and then there's also the times where you bump your head, like I mentioned in the kitchen, right, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a setback, right? Um, so one, right, getting discharged from the hospital, big one, being able to go home, being able to start school, right? And then there's also like these smaller ones where maybe they're not as quote unquote significant in society's eyes, but they were big for me, right?
Mm,
So the person I got into an accident with, I actually grew up next to, was our neighbor growing up. So him and I started going on walks together once my stamina was there, right? And then we started going on runs together. And then once it got cleared to lift, then we started lifting together, right? So all those are like stacking on top, right? First year of undergrad, didn't live on campus because there's too many distractions, right?
mm.
So then second year moved up, big shift, right? So all these things started coming in. Second year, then I started also 1 or 2 part-time jobs. I can't remember. Right. So all these things are starting just to say, okay, things are getting better. Right. Is that what you were? Excuse me.
Oh
is that
yeah,
what you
yeah.
were
I'm just
for?
curious of like as you start to see progress.
Mhm.
What are those signs that you're seeing progress? And I love that you bring up the fitness part of it, because that is definitely for me, without a doubt. And I think this is for everybody, whether you've had a traumatic brain injury or not. And this is what the guy that I'm friends with who fell out of the tree and had amnesia, exercise
Mhm.
became lifting, became his muse for the anger. He could channel it somewhere. And he
Mhm.
ended up getting really, he was somebody who was, I mean, he was smaller, not scrawny, but he was a farm guy like yourself. So he was farm strong, but he didn't look like strong, right? So he
Sure.
started going to the gym and he like just got massive. He was just a big dude. And he said that the only way he could get rid of that anger was to go to the gym for like 3 hours a day.
Mhm.
Right. So you've got to find a way to channel this stuff. And I think this is so important because in our society, especially, we sit so much and we deal with a lot of like mental stress that turns into physical stress. And then we don't do anything to get rid of it. And it's
Mhm.
just all of this pent up energy inside of us. You've got to send it somewhere. That energy's got to go somewhere. And
Yeah,
so,
I mean, send it somewhere, just allow it to release naturally.
yeah,
Like being out in nature is a great way to let that happen, or like sit in, you know, we were talking about. So, yes, I'm licensed in Denver, Colorado as a social worker, licensed clinical social worker, but now we also moved back to Wisconsin, right? So there's a lot more lakes in Wisconsin than in Colorado. So even just sitting by the beach and being able to listen to the waves, right, or the
mm,
rivers, and having that accessibility to slow your mind and your body down, right,
yeah.
and give you a lot of internal introspection, right, or just introspection, but just that internal ability to reflect on past experiences. Where do you want to go? How has managing anger worked in the past? What's not working? What is working, right? And just trying to filter out some of those different pieces.
So having that brain injury, did it cause your mind to speed up? Is that how it felt?
Mm,
As far as in the sense of like you weren't able to calm down or find that peace?
so, I mean, at first, when I was in the hospital and just out of the hospital, I think there were so many different meds in my system. It felt pretty foggy and groggy.
Yeah.
And then the TBI fog was kind of there afterwards. It wasn't really until I had that first concussion where I started needing to lay in bed for that 1 to 2 hours. And my brain would just like go in a loop of like, you're trying to fall asleep, but because you're thinking about it, you're not going to fall asleep. And then you're getting frustrated, and then you're getting angry, and then you're getting sad. And then it's like this, like, where does this loop end? Right. So that took like 6 months to go through, but like
Mm.
those were really the only pieces where like my brain or my thoughts were speeding up.
What helped you to sleep finally?
So it was a combination of working out, and I think decreasing slightly on my naps during the day, because fatigue is a huge part of TBI recovery. I think when I first got home, it was like nothing for me to sleep 12, 14 hours at night and take a 2 or 3 hour nap during the day.
Wow, yeah,
Right.
because your brain needs to recover. You need
Yeah.
that recovery.
Right. And then also then you're also pushing the what am I trying to say? You're pushing, speech therapy 3 times a week, right? So you're trying to
Yeah,
challenge the brain so that the brain knows it can still like push and grow, right? And then you're
right.
also challenging it academically, being in high school. So um but then so what helped me get back on the sleep, like being able to like modify those pieces. And then I actually, in like, again, I'm not a prescriber or anything, I started a low dose of melatonin to just help slow me down. And I don't know if it actually worked or if it was just the placebo of like you're taking 10 milligrams of something.
Yeah.
But then one of then I started being able to sleep, and then I was able to say, okay, let's go 5, right? Let's go 0 and see how it goes. And
it's got to be really difficult, especially in our culture, to need to sleep that much and to need to recover, because our culture does not really it doesn't support recovery that well, because we're always moving like 100 miles per hour, right? Nothing ever stops, nothing waits.
Yeah, we definitely live in a hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's pros and cons to it, both ways.
Yeah, both ways. But man, we could definitely afford slowing down. So I think about hearing that from you is like taking more time, and this is something I try to do a lot. Is I take a lot of time for myself. Sometimes, depending on who you talk to, maybe it's too much time. But I think we can all feel what we need, and when you start ignoring that feeling of what you know you need, you're heading for disaster, right? So you have to know that for yourself, and you have to be around people and surround yourself with people who let you do what you need to do, to get through the things you need to get through.
Yeah, and setting those boundaries, right? Or carving out that space, even if it's for, the busy parent that has, 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever children, right? But even if it's that 15 minutes in the morning, right? To have a cup of coffee in silence.
Yeah, man.
And some people find it in meditation, yoga, prayer, but just find those spaces, right? Or fishing or hunting, whatever it is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Some of the biggest breakthroughs that I have are bike riding. So I like bicycle riding. It's like where my mind, it doesn't have to think too much. I'm getting a lot of blood flow to the brain, and I'll have the best thoughts, the most peace while bike riding. So yeah, find those things. And like you said, I think it's a really good way of putting the boundaries, right? We have to put those boundaries in. Everybody does.
Yeah.
Was that something for you that was difficult to do, finding the boundaries to be able to do that? What was that process like?
Finding the boundaries to...
Yeah, was it difficult for you to put those boundaries in place, or was it something you finally realized this is a necessity? I have to do this. How did that end up happening?
Yeah. I think it was both difficult and easy. It was easy because I was going into my senior year and my first year of high school or college where I lived at home, right? So I didn't have the demands of being an adult or needing to provide for bills necessarily, right? And or other people, like in a family situation. So it was easy in that capacity, but it was also hard because going into your senior year, first year of college, there's also that social urge to be like, okay, where are the bonfires, right? What are friends going to be talking about Monday morning at school that you didn't get to go to, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that friends are going to be hanging out Friday, but knowing that I also need to be in bed by 8 or 9.
Especially at that age, that's got to be hard.
Right. So it's both easy and difficult, right? From different perspectives. And that's where, different parts of identity start getting a little bit
conflict,
challenging, right? And there's kind of a grief and loss process in there.
Yeah.
Right. Where there's things that you want to do that hopefully you could do, but you can't.
Well, I'll tell you, man, you probably saved a lot of brain cells not going to all those bonfires. You probably helped yourself out quite a bit.
Maybe, right? But,
I know I could have afforded the few more brain cells from all the bonfires that I went to. So
yeah. But there's also a component too where it's like, hey, maybe I missed out on some really good memories with friends too. Right. And then that's hard to pass up, especially when you're in that moment. Looking back, it's like, oh yeah, that was easy. But when you were in it and there's like those little like urges to move so that you could go hang out with friends, it's hard.
Yeah, especially at that age, that'd be definitely hard. What would you say for yourself is the most important lesson that you've learned through this whole experience?
Oh, the most important lesson. I'm actually going to quote one of my teachers from high school. And again, it's going to feed back to that kind of grit part, but he just told me, he's like, don't ever give up. Even when it gets hard, don't give up. And I think that is that has come to play in a lot of different aspects in starting a private practice, also again being a father and a husband.
Yeah.
I mean, those pieces kind of just start living out, and then also being a social worker. I mean, a lot of the people that you end up working with have had people that have given up, right? So holding that space, holding that hope is something that then you provide.
Yeah, Daniel, I love that, man. It's such simple advice. Don't give up, right? It's and the most powerful things in life are the most simple things in life.
Mhm.
So I love the fact that that's the thing that you stand by is don't give up, because so like you said, so many people have, but also at the same time, and I know this, as you continue to persevere through something,
Mhm.
you get to a point where it's like, give up. You get to a point where like turn around. That doesn't even, what would I even do? Like, how would I give up? That doesn't even, I don't even know what the heck I would actually literally do to give up. It wouldn't even make any
Right.
sense to me.
Mhm.
It's like not even in me anymore. So I think
Right.
for you, it's probably the same thing, right? That's not even in you. And then you can give that to somebody else. Like there's no option here. Giving up's
Mhm.
not an option.
Yeah, it's like we can find other solutions, but we're not going to go backwards here.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, obviously, there are times where it's like, okay, like it's not feasible to keep going, right? Obviously, you have to think rationally in terms of investments or in terms of if something is going to pay off down the road.
Sure.
But it's like, are we able to pivot? Are we not? Right. And what does that
Yeah,
look
exactly. Yeah. Giving up is not pivoting or not finding a better way or
like?
hitting a roadblock. Yeah, because that's the part of the not giving up is there's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be things where it's like, oh, this is it. There's nowhere else to
Mhm.
go. And it's like, no, you've just hit a plateau. That plateau means it's time to go to, there's going to be a new breakthrough coming.
Right.
What are some of the main misconceptions about recovery from trauma and TBIs and things of that nature? What are like the general misconceptions that people don't pick up on who've never experienced it?
So one that I've lived and also have seen people struggle with is like, especially with the TBI, the body is a magnificent organism to heal, and a lot of the physical healing and like you cut yourself, you'll see a scar, right? Like that stuff will come and go, and it comes and goes faster, even though if it's like a week or 2 weeks or a month, right? Like a month, let's say you have to have stitches for 2 weeks or something, right? And then that fades away, but then the healing continues, right? Keeps moving down this process. And I think sometimes people get so used to seeing the rapid healing that then they're like, wow, I'm 6 months out and I'm still having challenges recalling certain words or memories. Right. And then they start to feel like down on themselves. Or is this how life is going to be? And it might very well be. We can't predict what recovery will look like, especially with TBIs.
Yeah.
But we also don't know what it will look like 6 months from now, right? Or a year and a half from now. And so to give you that kind of perspective, right? Like I think it was around the 2-year mark where my fatigue, maybe 2.5, inside that window, 2 to 2.5. Inside that window was when my fatigue levels started decreasing finally. So I mean that's 2.5 years between, what was it? July was the accident. So put that as July 2011 to December of 2011 ish.
Wow.
Right. But I mean, that's a 2-year, versus like a month of like, okay, you cut yourself or you got cut in the fall or however the TBI was sustained, right? That's been long healed.
I think that's a good lesson we can all take too is things always take longer than we expect them to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Definitely.
And we have to, this is one I struggle with. And anybody who's a driven kind of person, we get impatient, right? But giving yourself grace, giving your body grace, giving other people grace is huge. because we can get so caught up in the moment of like, why isn't this happening yet? And we get so self-absorbed in like, why is this happening to me? Why hasn't this worked out for me yet? Why isn't this fixed yet? Whatever it might be. but giving yourself that grace to be like, well, it takes as long as it takes.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's where grit gets folded in there, right? Patience, everything kind of comes together, because even like building a business, right? Search engine optimization takes some time, and and it's like a never-ending game. So there are these pieces where it's like who you are becoming in the process is the real kind of reward, or the end goal, so to speak.
Yeah, man, that's the truth right there. Who you become in the process, that's the sign that you should look for. Who am I becoming through this? Because that's where the juice is. That's where the good stuff is. So it's been an awesome conversation, brother. As we come to the end of this, I want to let people know about your practice. So revitalizementalhealth.com. They can go to the website and just talk a little bit about what you do now. How do you help guys recover their mental health from traumatic brain injuries and things of that nature? What can they expect if they go to the website and work with you?
Yeah, so I mean, they're going to find a list of, other mental health challenges that people can experience that they can read about. Also read about some of the services I provide: individual therapy, group therapy, couples therapy, if that's needed, and then also pricing information. And coaching's different than being a therapist. So I am licensed in Colorado as in Wisconsin. So the person would have to reside in one of those two states for my licensure to apply for me to work with them, unfortunately. But I mean, from what you see on the site, even if you're not in one of those two states, you can also be like, okay, I need to look for somebody similar, right? Like somebody that's trained or certified in eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, or somatic experiencing therapy, right? And knows how to work with trauma, knows how to work with some of those difficult intersecting components of not only trauma, but what does it mean to have trauma and want to heal, but also not being too scared to ask for help, or maybe fearing what people will look like if they find out I'm in therapy. So
yeah, very true, right? People have a hard time, especially guys, admitting like even going to therapy or talking about their problems or feelings or things they're struggling with can be a huge challenge for them. So I love that. And I think for you too also, and I know you didn't say this, but I'm going to say this for you, just as a mentor, I think for people, you probably would be really qualified just to help people through certain situations because of what you've been through. So that mentorship also can be huge.
Yeah, definitely.
So amazing, Daniel. I love what you're doing. Also, before we do sign off, I just want to let people know also, so I'm a leadership communication coach. One of the things that I love to do is help people become an authority in their space. So if you want to create content, a platform, a podcast that helps you become the authority in what you do, that helps you become the expert in your field, drives clients to you and builds your reputation, and also a platform you can monetize and make a living off of, I encourage you to check me out. You can go to robzwentz.com and see what I'm all about. But this has been an amazing conversation. Check out Daniel at revitalizementalhealth.com. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
I think just remembering that, assertive defiance, right? Life is always going to come, and it's not going to give you a warning either.
Yeah, man. So be defiant and be assertive in that. I love that. Good stuff. Yeah. This has been the Unstuck movement, another true testimony of breakthrough.